When Erik Scott was shot and killed July 10th in front of the Summerlin Costco, it set off a community controversy. Was Metro right in shooting the man they say pulled a gun out after acting erratically inside the store?
8 years after Michael Bell Jr. was shot and killed by Kenosha police, the Bell family stands at a Brookfield law office presenting some of the results from a private investigation.
It is apparent that the Kenosha Police Department, in order to protect the image of their department, chose to participate in and cover up a criminal act and acts rather than tarnish the image of their department.
Second half of the arena bears down on the issue of law enforcement in America. It's not a shock. There needs to be some real changes at every level. Far too often it's been allowed to get out of hand and turn policing into a good old boy and good old girl outfit in so many places. But come on now, not every cop is a bad apple. The good are, as usual, being tainted with the bad. And it's the arrogance of some citizens also that should be part of the equation that cannot be left untouched. Some citizens. Let's get to it. Our first guest is a retired Air Force colonel who flew missions in Bosnia, Afghanistan, and Desert Storm closer to home. He lost his son at a seemingly innocent traffic stop. Let's welcome back Mike Bell. We're also joined by the former Rocky Mountain Bureau Chief for Aviation Week and Space Technology, current consultant and author of The Permit. He also lost a son due to police action and now fights for a return to credibility and accountability. Let's welcome back Bill Scott. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for being here again today.
Thank you.
We wanted to follow up on this because I know we've had a brief couple of moments to talk about this. That's why we wanted to devote a little more time to it. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you on this one. Are we seeing cops being more violent because we have more recording devices and we're seeing them now when maybe we didn't see them before? Or are the cops themselves becoming more violent? Again, here's a double part, because they can or because they're being forced to by the citizenry?
Personally, I think that we're exposing more. I mean, with cell phones and with body cams and with dash cams and so forth, what the public didn't know before is now being made readily available. And before you'd have to watch it on TV, but now you can watch it on your computer or smartphone.
What about, though, the people who will say, and many of the cops I've spoken to will say this, they will say that they, Mike, are a lot more aggressive these days because the public is in many cases more aggressive towards them?
You know, that's really hard to tell. I'm not a law officer. I haven't been out there every day watching how aggressive the public is. All I know is what happened in my own son's case. I mean, we had a kid get out of a car, and you can see that if you go to the dash cam video, my son was pretty aggressively handled and taken off camera. And to me, that was pretty aggressive. So I can't really give you a firm answer on that. I think some of your other studio audience might be able to work on that. But for me, I really can't tell you that data right now.
All right. Well, again, it's not so much data. I mean, I'm just thinking about what you have seen because you're so heavily involved in this. The two of you are so heavily involved in fighting a lot of this after what happened to your kids. So, Bill, let me come to you on the same question then. Those cops who say people are much more aggressive towards us, therefore we have to become more aggressive.
I think the answer is probably in the middle there somewhere, Ed, but we do have to take a hard look at modern police officer training. And I think that's where a good bit of the fault is. Cops nowadays are trained to be fearful. And by the time they hit the streets, they see everybody out there as a potential threat. The Atlantic magazine had an outstanding article back in December of 2014 that examined that training issue very carefully. And what they found was that cops nowadays are told you do whatever you have to go home at night. And they emphasize over and over and over the idea that don't wait, you know, take action first so that you are not harmed.
Might that be because, again, getting back to the point that there are more people who are better armed than they are and are more aggressive?
That's hard to tell. It's a vicious circle. It's point counterpoint, if you will. More people feel threatened by cops, so do they arm up more? And that means that cops then tend to become more militarized, more aggressive. It's a never-ending circle, so we have to find a way of breaking it, and that's what Mike and I have been working on.
Now, you talked a little bit about the vicious circle and you talked a little bit about training. So we're just up against the clock. We're going to take a break, come back, and I want to focus on those two things. Gentlemen, please stand by. When we come back with this special edition of The Arena, let's focus still on American law enforcement. But let's get right to what we mentioned here, that vicious cycle. Cops are in fear of their lives. Citizens are in fear of the cops. There are weapons involved on both sides, and then it comes down to training. All right, let's then try to find an answer. Where do we have to start in order to cure this vicious cycle? That and so much more coming up when we continue right here on The Arena. All right, let's get back to work. Let's welcome back retired Air Force Colonel and father who fights for better law enforcement following the death of his son at the hands of police, Mike Bell, and author of The Permit, based on actual events associated with the death of his son at the hands of police. Let's welcome back Bill Scott. All right, I tell you what, let's go ahead and get back to where we were, because I think, Mike, we hit a good point here. This vicious cycle. There has to be a way to stop this. There has to be some way to at least put a breaker in here, because we've got to get there, or else this is going to continue to circle out of control. So then where do we start? The cops, the citizens, the training? Mike, where is it first?
It has to start with the independent review of all police-related fatalities. It has to start there, and it has to start with the external investigation. That's something that we passed here in Wisconsin. If you take a look at what the United States Air Force and also the aviation industry does, there's four legs that this has to be built upon. It has to be built on external investigation, independent review to determine cause. It has to look at accountability, and then the final step is keep a database so that we really know the true cause of everything, and then take that database and distribute it amongst law enforcement so they can learn from it, so that the academies can start teaching new methods and so forth.
Then Mike, who's afraid of this? Who's worried about this, though, Mike? Is it the unions who don't want this? Is it the cops? Is it the governments? Whom is it?
I believe it's law enforcement right now. But you know what? What happened here in Wisconsin, I think, is a clear example. Right now, they feel good that there's been a number of shootings, but external investigation is coming in. They're not receiving the heat. An outside body is reviewing that. And that's very important here, because I think they're breathing a little bit easy here in Wisconsin because of the law we passed April of last year.
All right, Bill, does it come down strictly then to just that, to this? Because I'll tell you what, the more I think about the Independent Review Board, I agree. I think it's a wonderful idea. But then again, you know there are going to be people who are going to say the board didn't get it right, something's been polluted, that somebody's been paid off. You know that this is going to continue. How do we cut that off and at least get to a point where the public feels semi-secure in these investigations?
Well, several points, Ed. One is better training, where cops need to be trained to de-escalate rather than go straight to the lethal end of the spectrum. But the other part of it is there needs to be a deterrent in there. Every cop on the street needs to be deterred from going for the gun first. And exactly what Mike said, we think, is a primary way of getting there, and that is the third-party independent investigation, ideally by civilians. And there's a precedent, not only in Wisconsin, but a very effective system has been set up in Canada. Ontario, clear back in 1990, was experiencing the same situation we have here. Cops are losing credibility, killing a lot of people, and getting away with it. They set up something called a Special Investigations Unit, and that is manned by strictly civilians. Yes, some of the civilians are former law enforcement people, but they have a wide, diverse set of experts come in and do true third-party investigations. It seems to be working quite well there.
You'd have to agree, though, Mike, about a minute we have left before we take a break here. It's very difficult to tell a cop to be calm, to be easy, to be non-aggressive when he or she knows that there is the possibility that the person 10 feet away from them has a weapon and has no fear whatsoever to shoot them dead.
You know, and I agree with that, but here I am, I'm a retired military pilot, and you want to talk about dangerous, you get in a military jet in a combat situation, we had to go through that same thing. And if you take a look at, I sent you a chart, and you might be able to put it up for your viewers, but it came from Aviation Week and Space Technology. It's actually a chart that shows you that the accident rate using the methods that have been developed by aviation is decreasing, and we're at an all-time low in a 70-year period. And so these methods do work. One profession is using them, the other one isn't, and that's what we're trying to slowly get this other profession to pick up on it.
All right, now, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you both to take a break here for a couple of moments because we're going to come back for one more time here with Mike Bell and Bill Scott after the break again, focusing in on American law enforcement. We've talked again about that vicious cycle that's here, but now let's get to the training. Why are current cops and a lot of current cop unions fearful of the training? Not only that, but can the current existing cops be retrained? That and so much more when we continue on MidPoint on The Arena. Once more into The Arena on law enforcement. Retired Air Force colonel and father who fights for better law enforcement following the death of his son, Mike Bell, and author of The Permit, based on the actual events associated with the death of his son. Welcome back, Bill Scott. Gentlemen, I'm going to go to body cams next because we have to start out what happened in San Diego recently. And I'll tell you what, Bill, I'm going to start with you on this one. In San Diego, they're using body cameras. Complaints have fallen 40% from the public, and use of personal body force by officers has been reduced by 46.5%. Doesn't this show us the cops are paying attention, but so are the citizens, these people who might be out there just trying to throw allegations at cops and get in their face? It works.
It definitely works, Ed, and we've seen that in any number of different cities. Rialto, California saw something similar. Richmond, California, the same sort of thing. There have to be procedures, protocols put in place to make sure that the cameras are on and running at a time. We just saw a situation in Michigan where a dash camera from a police car caught a brutal beating of a man, but miraculously, all 6 officers that were on scene, their body cams just didn't work that time. So body cameras are not a panacea, but they're definitely a good start, and I think every cop in the nation should be wearing them, not only for protection of citizens, but for police officers' protection too.
All right, let's turn this into the other side of this whole argument. And Mike, I throw this to you on this one because, yeah, while body cams work and it's a great idea, I still want to get to the point of sometimes this comes down to citizen arrogance because I have seen it, I have heard it, I have watched it. There are those who say, I'm going to get in the face of that cop and I don't care who he or she is. Those are the ones who put the fists up there, who actually carry the weapons in front of them. Isn't it a fact that we've got to teach these people as well not to exacerbate the situation? It is part of the equation, yes?
I do agree it's part of the equation, but one of the things that you have to think about is this, is that, you know, if a young man or a young woman goes out with their friends and they've had a couple drinks or whatever and they're slightly intoxicated, they don't have the highest form of thinking at that point. And do we punish them for that? And so going back to the body camera, you know, it's really a flight data recorder on an airplane. It's capturing everything that's occurring at that instant. And it has to be scrutinized and it has to be brought back to law enforcement. And they have to say, what can we learn from this scenario and how can we improve this? And that's what really the secret is about a body camera. Unless it's scrutinized with the same methods that they use in the Air Force or in aviation, the body camera is really not going to be as successful as it could be.
Then what is it going to take for us to get there? What will it take for us to get there? I got about 1:30 left, Mike. What's it going to take?
What's it going to take to get there?
To get to that four-legged idea that you talked about.
You know what? A state is not going to pass all the legislation immediately. Go to external investigation. That is the first portion of the leg that needs to be taken care of. The second thing is go for independent review. The third thing, accountability. Right here in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, just last week, an officer was fired because he didn't follow training, and he ended up escalating something until he shot a citizen. He was fired for the first time in Wisconsin history. And the last thing is if we have independent review, we have the ability to track the data, and that's what we need. Those 4 elements are what we need to make sure that this works.
Bill, 30 seconds left. Can you retrain the officers who are now on the streets, or is it just going to be impossible?
You can definitely retrain them because they need to have annual retraining at least on several points. The first that I would train them with is the Constitution. They have to understand that they work for the citizens and the citizens have rights, and that cops are not above the law. That's how you start changing the culture. The other part of it is what Mike said. You have to hold every police officer accountable I think that starts with body cams and much better training and recurrent training, not just academy training, recurrent training.
Let's stop right there, unfortunately, by time, and put out culture and accountability, the two words that need to come into this conversation on a day-to-day, second-by-second basis. Mike Bell, Bill Scott, can't thank you both enough. We will stay up on this as well. I look forward to the next time we talk and learn a whole lot more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Take care, gentlemen. Third and final hour of the Friday Midpoint. Congressman Mike Kelly is on board to deal with a staggering mess America faces in Yemen. And oh yeah, by the way, there's also a staggering mess in Washington when it comes down to the new GOP budget. Plus, it's Friday. It means the political punching bag. So much more when we continue right here on Midpoint.